Hello all again, this is Brandon Jarot vlogging on Jarot Fridays for 243 Introduction to Music Technology, and I'm here to address Quentin Breach's question. And his question was, if you had a exceptionally talented student in your marching band and they also were exceptionally good at a fall sport like football or cross country or tennis, what would you do if an athletic event like postseason event coincided with a marching band competition, say on Saturdays, usually what marching band competitions are, and I know sometimes football playoff games also occur on Saturdays. And what I would do in this situation is weigh the options for the student. How good are they, and what can they contribute to their sport that coincides with the competition on Saturday? In my opinion, with marching band, the student's role in the marching band is more evident when they're not there. You're not in the form, your sound's not there, mostly not being in the form, because with sound can be substituted in for just more players unless you have subs, which usually in the scenario marching bands you really don't, because the students in high school aren't they're not as committed, or they're not as committed to memorizing other people's spots, because usually all the students are in the marching band and are on the field. And it's a very interesting question that sometimes we seem to look over, or directors seem to look over until they actually until they actually happen. In the case of which role the student plays in the marching band, whether they're on the field or they're a drum major, that's definitely going to have a factor in whether or not they go to the other athletic event versus the competition for marching band. If they're drum major, I would hope that they would reconsider not doing such a sport during the fall, and instead focusing more on marching band, and they just kind of push that aside and they set the priorities straight before the season starts. But if they're an instrumentalist that's playing on the field, that's a little different, because they think that they can definitely balance the two and not showing up maybe at football games, or they have other athletic events. If they're on the football team, they obviously cannot play their instrument on the Friday night games, or and play also on the football field. With tennis or cross country, it's a little bit different. They can definitely show up later and then try to march on the field. But as far as like football players go, they have to play the entire football game, and so does the marching band. So in that scenario, is if the student's really good at football, they should definitely do the football game on Friday. And if they're really good at cross country or tennis, they can definitely show up later. But as far as competitions go, I would hope that the drum major is always there for the competitions and didn't decide to do or try and balance like a fall sport with marching band. If you're obviously, as I said, an instrumentalist, it'll be easier to um, kind of not show up for specific things. But competitions definitely, I would hope they would, plan their schedule ahead, or maybe look to see when postseason is for these specific sports, especially football, and maybe sometimes make a hard decision whether or not to do one or the other. But if they decide to do both, I, as the director, look in their as they're standing in the band and how important or vital their position is in the form, or their position as in their instrument, like first part, second part, third part, and what support we need. If we have more second and third parts than first parts, I can understand maybe one student not being able to make it to the competition, even though that will throw off the form just a little bit. But also, what would vary if the student goes on the competition versus the football game, or vice versa, definitely has to go with their position and their role on their team, whether it be cross country, tennis, or football, and whether or not they can really make a contribution to this postseason event. And I would hope that, in the long run, they can find somebody to substitute for them. I know for tennis, that's a little more difficult than like cross country and football, because cross country, any student can definitely show up each day and try and win the race for them. And maybe if you're a star quarterback or star wide receiver, you have somebody in the backup, because they always have to have backups, whether or not the student's injured or not, or in the marching, or if they're in marching band or any other extracurricular activities or so on and so forth. So yeah, that's my general gist of it. If the student is a drum major, definitely would hope that they would reconsider doing a fall sport and consider doing being a drum major, and uh, and overall pick the drum major over the sport, so they don't have to have these definite conflicts with postseason events and Saturday marching competitions. And as for other students that are on the field that are playing their instruments, it's a little more lenient for football games, but for competitions, you really have to consider their position and their standing in the band, and also in their athletic event if the team really does need them, even though they're a star player. So yeah, I'll pass it on to Matt for Matt Mondays, and everybody have a wonderful and sunny day.